We got more rumors heading toward the 2023 NFL draft, and it always involves quarterbacks. This time, the Patriots quarterback, who they just drafted in the first round just a couple drafts ago, Mac Jones. Is he on the way out? Where could he land? And what are the New England Patriots up to if this is all true? Plus, defensive tackle rankings for the 2023 NFL draft coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. That's the place to get your Twitter questions in for tomorrow's mailbag episode. Today, we're talking defensive tackles in the 2023 draft, but some teams might make some moves before they get on the clock in that draft. And one of those teams might be the New England Patriots, Matt. The latest out of New England, there is rumors that Bill Belichick has shopped Mac Jones to multiple teams this offseason, according to Pro Football Talk. First of all, as we do this time of year, we got to pass this through the BS meter. It is lying season after all. Who would be benefiting from this lie? And do you think Mac Jones is getting shopped? Do you think he could actually get moved?
I do. And I wonder, there was frustration, to be kind, last year. And we can all blame the coordinators and all that. But Bill hired those coordinators, and he's the czar, and he's not used to people questioning him, including Brady. I bet that didn't sit well with Belichick, who is a pretty ornery fella to begin with. But as we get a little older, you take a little less flack,
Yeah, I think be quiet and do your job is what he would like to hear from all of his players, including his young quarterback, who was only in his second year last year in the NFL. And it did not seem like both outwardly watching games, seeing his actions on the sideline, or now that we're hearing internally, maybe he was not that type. But I will say also, there are plenty of videos and photos and reports of a very ornery quarterback that he used to have that won a whole bunch of Super Bowls that just retired on his way to the Hall of Fame, and Tom Brady as well. So, a fired up quarterback is nothing new to Bill Belichick. So that alone would clearly not be enough. There's got to be more to it, Mac Jones.
I agree. But I also think you can question if that's the style of quarterback I really want. You know what I mean? Do they regret drafting Jones? Do they look at a certain athletic quarterback in the AFC North and say, why don't we make an effort for him? We've played against him a million times and it's been no fun. Or can we get up to Richardson neighborhood? Or, do we let's take a step back. This is like 2 summers ago. But remember when Brady was leaving the Patriots? We all know it was a foregone conclusion. And where's he going to go? I mean, there's like 5 different teams rumored. He obviously settled on Tampa and it worked out great. But I always thought the most interesting thing of that whole situation was what do the Patriots do when they're not married to Brady? It worked so well. Now they can go shopping for any flavor they like. Chocolate's been fantastic, but I've never tried Rocky Road. I've played against Rocky Road, and it's a pain in the butt to play against. And they went and signed Cam Newton, and that was not even a good minor solution. And, they didn't really cater to him. And then they draft Mac Jones and basically ran back the Brady way. I just wonder if they don't want that style of quarterback.
That's very interesting. It's sort of he's had the nicest house in the neighborhood. The neighbors remodeled recently, and he's kind of peeking over the fence and saying, maybe it's time to update my house now. And but it's such a that one's hard for me. Real quick, because there's so many sides to this. It's okay. What does this do for the Patriots? What are the Patriots trying to accomplish here? Who's a fit for Mac Jones? I want to back up even further here before we continue that with Lamar Jackson potentially and the Patriots and what they might be up to. And just look at Mac Jones first and who he is and what he's done so far in the NFL and what value he might have. He was the best of the 5 rookie quarterbacks his rookie year. in 2021. He the Patriots surprised all of us. We talked about how bad that roster was, right? On this very podcast. They went 10-7. He started all 17 games as a rookie in 2021. 67.6% passing, 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, almost 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is pretty good for a rookie. That was and he even threw a bunch of people who bowed out of the Pro Bowl, was even on the Pro Bowl roster, right? He had a whole bunch of Rookie of the Year votes. I think he was second in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting that year. Then comes year 2, new set of offensive coordinators for him after Josh McDaniels goes to Las Vegas to be the Raiders head coach. Patriots season is worse. Mac Jones worse. He starts 14 games. They're 6-8 in those games. His touchdown to interception ratio is almost 1-to-1 now, so almost cut in half. 14 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. 65% passer, so he drops 2% in his completion percentage. Just worse across the board. The team, Mac Jones, he's upset. The team's not working well. But if he was upset at how the offense was being coordinated, I think he was right, and Bill Belichick agreed because they brought in a new offensive coordinator, right? So there's something.
Right.
And
the offense was broken last year. Like, I don't care who there's to blame. Right.
So is Mac Jones bad? Is he mediocre? And they're just realizing that. They helped him a lot as a rookie, having some really short third down, some very basic, let's run the ball well on first and second down, make sure our quarterback's not dropping back in third and long situations. They did a good job of that. But clearly, I think Mac Jones, and this was my problem with everyone talking about him being as high as the number 3 pick in the 2021 draft, he's not that guy that he's going to strap the team on his back and elevate you because of his physical ability, and he has to be great otherwise. And if the Patriots are ready to move off of him, that's telling me that they don't like the person, and they just don't like Mac. Don't think he is a dude, because otherwise, what evidence do you have that he's not the quarterback that you thought he was in 2021?
I can't possibly believe, and maybe I'm just wrong, and I have questioned Purdy and Zappe to no end because I'm an old school dude and they have no pedigree and blah, blah, blah. I can't believe Bill looks at this and says, Zappe's better, trade Mac. Like, I think that would be insanity.
I think it would be more like, there's not that big of a gap, so let's trade Mac, because he might have value where Zappe doesn't. And that's where I would be with this for the Patriots. They have a first-round pick in the middle of the first round. They could get something for Mac Jones. What could they get for Mac Jones? And what would be a landing spot, I think, is a question that we'll have to try to answer here on today's podcast. And then also what you already talked about a little bit there is what are the Patriots up to? So let's start with that, because we've already gone down that road. Do you really believe in your heart, Matt, that this is a ploy, this is a play to go get Lamar Jackson in New England?
My spidey sense is tingling like crazy that it is. That he's played against Lamar. The Ravens have had a lot of success against the Patriots. Harbaugh versus Belichick has been great battles, playoffs, and I've often said this about Seattle with Pete Carroll. These guys are old. They're not building, how much the shelf life of Belichick and Carroll, et cetera, isn't long. I mean, are you drafting Hendon Hooker and waiting 4 years until he's 30 and he's in his prime? You know what I mean? Like, give me Lamar and let's run this thing back. They already run the ball well with Stevenson. They don't throw the ball well to begin with. It's better weapons than Lamar's had. I mean, and
Bill Belichick just had a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he's probably looking at things and saying, I'll coordinate the hell out of this defense and make things hard for teams on their offense. And you give me a star quarterback again, we can go back and win titles again. So I can buy it. I
believe it.
And the other part of it is just from the pure value standpoint of what's going on right now, since nobody seems to be super in on Lamar Jackson, this is the cheapest a star quarterback maybe has ever been.
I think that's part of it. Like, I think you look at it and be like, well, no one's going to bite on Lamar. If I can get him for 80% of the asking price, he's still the same player. Dump him back for a second-round pick or whatever. Lose, even sign him to an offer now. What's New England pick, like 14? It's not in the top 10. And then next year you hope it's later, which in that division, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Imagine if Lamar and Aaron Rodgers both ended up in the AFC East. But
that's the other, dude. I didn't really think about that angle. He's like, hold on a second. I got to compete against what's going on with Miami. I got to compete against Josh Allen. And guess what?
He's losing the arms race right now.
Oh my goodness.
He's losing the arms race in a huge way. And he can't possibly look at Mac and be like, can I beat Aaron Rodgers twice a year and Josh Allen twice a year, and what's going on in Miami with all their spending?
Even if you like Mac, even if you like Mac, it's not that.
Right. Or can you package Mac and picks to get to 3 to Richardson even, and just say, I at least need I need another bomb. I need a nuke. I don't have one. Everyone else in the division does. So I'm going to bring the pod to a screeching halt here, because I think this would be the most hilarious thing in the history of the world. What if Mac Jones for Trey Lance? Straight up. Boom. And Shanny gets his dude. Shanny gets his man.
Covering the 49ers is exhausting with the quarterback thing. 2 consecutive days, there's already been a rumor that the 49ers, that there was talk at the combine that the 49ers, again, another report from Pro Football Talk, and grain of salt, I'll just say that with some of these reports that are coming out of some spots. They have to provide content, right? Kirk Cousins and Kyle Shanahan, every offseason there's one of those that comes out where that Kyle wants to go reunite with Kirk Cousins. Then there's Aaron Rodgers today. It's like, oh, if I was a radio guy, East Coast radio guy, and I don't believe this report as far as I can throw it, that, at least it would make sense that you're trying to get a Hall of Fame quarterback if it's Aaron Rodgers. For the 49ers, if it falls through with the Jets, the Niners might try to go get Aaron Rodgers, right? And then now there's the Mac Jones thing. He'll be connected forever to Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. Is he really the guy that Kyle Shanahan wanted? Got talked into Trey Lance, and so it's never going to end with these reports and these stories. I think that the 49ers already got somebody in the Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins tier that potentially could be even better with Brock Purdy, who's on the cheapest contract you can have for a starting quarterback if he ends up being the guy. And they've got a lot of contingencies also. And there's still a lot of upside for Trey Lance, and they're not paying any of these guys very much money. So it's a big no for everybody for the 49ers. But those 49ers connections will never go away.
Never go away. So I'm sitting here scanning my brain. Who wants Mac Jones? And I don't think you get a first-round pick for him. Maybe you get a second. Maybe. I mean, you're buying low on him.
I got some ideas. I got a couple ideas. We'll get to that next. What would the cost be, and which teams make sense for Mac Jones? Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. The Built March Madness has come to an end, as does the real March Madness, the Built March Madness, going into early April, and we've got a big showdown in the finals of the bracket. So make your vote. Last day to do it. Salted caramel bar versus brownie batter puff in the finals. Which is your favorite? I'm going salted caramel bar because I like the bars, and the salted caramel is pretty good. I was sad to see the peanut butter brownie bar go out in the second round, although a tough opponent there in cookie dough chunk puff. So make your vote count at builtmarchmadness.com. One lucky Locked On listener that votes at builtmarchmadness.com will get 50 lucky listeners will get a free box of Built Bars, and one lucky Locked On listener will get a 12-month subscription to Built and have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. High protein, low calorie, low sugar. That is the combination. Run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to make your vote count in the final matchup and pick up a box while you're there. Okay. Let's say that this passes the BS meter.
Yes.
Bill Belichick is shopping Mac Jones. He wants him gone. He's got something else going on, whether it's Bailey Zappi and building it naturally, or he's got his sights set on Lamar Jackson. What does a team have to give up for Mac Jones? It's not a first rounder. I think we both agree. Is it a second rounder? Is it a third rounder? Is it a conditional future fifth rounder? What are we talking about for Mac Jones?
Conditional third, something like that. Third this year and a conditional third next year.
Okay.
I mean,
that can become more if he does something
right.
Your team makes the playoffs with Mac Jones, you're giving up a second and a third.
Like, I don't know that they get a top 50 pick this year. Late second, maybe.
I would think they would ask for a second for sure. Would they get that? I don't know. I think but I do think it's a day 2 pick. I don't think you would sneak in and get out of it with a 4th round pick for Mac Jones.
I don't either. I think
he's got too much value, and he still has some talent, and has shown that he could jump in and be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And that has value, especially with a rookie contract.
Yes, I agree. So I've thought of some teams. Have you?
I have thought of some teams. Yes.
Like you mentioned, go ahead.
The obvious teams for me are the ones that need a quarterback, that don't have something set long term, that are not in a position to get one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft class.
Yeah, like
So
I thought
Phoenix,
about Washington,
Tennessee.
Atlanta, although I think I would rather have a runner. I mean, not everybody wants a statue, you know?
Right. And yeah, what's would the Falcons have that big of a grade of Mac Jones over what they've already seen from Ritter? And they sound
Probably
like
not.
they're sold on ready to go with Ritter. If it's only a 3rd round pick, let them fight it out. Sure. You know, and that's where it starts to get like more teams involved. If it's a 3rd round pick, I think a lot of teams could say, look, this is a starting quarterback in the NFL on a rookie contract. Let's bring him in.
That has a lot of value.
Let him battle with our guy, because our guy's not set in stone either. So, you know, the Falcons would start to make a lot of sense in that case, especially when you start talking about their 3rd rounder instead of their higher 2nd rounder.
Yes. So what about Tampa and you draft Will Levis? You know, like if I trade for Mac Jones and these type of deals, that doesn't mean I'm not drafting another, or maybe it's a year from now. So I was thinking the Rams and the Bucks, you know, like times are tough for those guys. Maybe they would even want Stafford back. Who knows? You know, like let's just go young. We could still be terrible and end up with the USC kid, or, you know.
Wow, that's actually a good one, Matt. What about the Patriots say, give us Stafford, let me make a run, and you guys get your rebuild going, and
right,
and go with Mac Jones. And I think Mac Jones would be a great fit for that offense too.
So some other ones I was thinking are Minnesota or someone like them, and I guess Tennessee would qualify too. Like decent above average starter who's on his last year of his contract. It's old, you know, that Mac could be the 2 and or take over when they're 2 and 5 or whatever. And maybe he's the answer. They get him on the cheap, or maybe they draft one next year in addition to. What I would hate is if I'm a Texans or especially a Colts fan, and that's your avenue. Well, oh, we're going to get Mac Jones and draft Will Anderson. No. That's not okay to me.
I do like the idea of drafting Will Anderson with the Colts, but the quarterback, I would need just a little more there. I would need a little more there. Or for the Colts, what if they can get, okay, let's say you're a Colts fan. I'm Chris Ballard. Here's my plan. I'm trying to convince you of it. What if it's a 3rd for Mac Jones? You draft Will Anderson at 4. Then whether it's maneuvering back up a little bit or just with your 2nd round pick, you go Will Levis. So now you got a Will Levis, Mac Jones battle.
Right.
And you got upside. You've got some, you got I think a high floor that one of those guys is going to be good, decent. And you got a star player at a cornerstone position on your defense.
I don't dislike it. I think that's good. I think that makes a lot of sense. Green Bay. I mean, do you know Jordan Love's the guy? You could just have a flat out competition between the two, you know? I think that's the type of thing it would be. Like maybe like, I'm not even sure he'd be guaranteed. You're the man, you're the starter, you know, you have to beat out Baker Mayfield, or you got to beat out Love or whoever, you know, but I don't think the market's going to be super strong for him.
I kind of like the Titans. I like Washington as well. The Titans are interesting because they've got a veteran quarterback that is in the last year of his deal, makes a lot against the cap. You could argue that isn't better than Mac Jones anyway right now. Buys you some time. You're not in the spot to go get your quarterback right now, and it's not going to cost you future firsts or this year's first, and you can get an offensive tackle or whatever it is, you know, a pick 11. And you were just in a war room that might have liked Lance enough to draft him number 3 if you're Rand Carthon, who just came from the 49ers organization.
Yeah.
And the other option for you, if you're the Titans, and there's been reports that maybe they're willing to move up, and they've been talking with the Arizona Cardinals to go all the way up to number 3. And you draft the 3rd best quarterback in this class, and you give up multiple first-round picks, and he's a raw quarterback. And now it's like, okay, he needs to play, but do you sit him? And it starts to sound a lot like the situation that Rand Carthon just came from. That doesn't look like it's worked out that well. Would he want to does he like that plan? Would he want to try it again? Or would he have learned from that plan and say, that's not a good plan, actually, let's do something else.
Let's do door number 2.
Yeah. And maybe that's a Mac Jones door. And maybe he had a high grade on him in the 49ers draft room, which we already know they did in 2021, which is the organization he came from. So
2 new teams just dawned on me that I think are really intriguing. And real quick, back to Washington. I think the Commanders are a playoff team in the NFC with Mac Jones. Yeah.
They might be with Jacoby Brissett.
They might be with Jacoby Brissett.
Their conversation, because they've already done some things at quarterback, and they'll say, how much better is he?
Yeah.
Or maybe he goes back anyways maybe it's Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi battling out in New England.
Two intriguing ones that just dawned on me that are in the AFC. I don't think Mac Jones is good enough to say we can't trade him in the AFC. I don't think they trade him in the division.
Yeah.
The Raiders, Josh McDaniels' system, Jimmy and Mac. Not bad.
That's almost what it was in San Francisco 2 years ago. And McDaniels has already seen Mac Jones play well.
Right.
Well, so that was the thing. There was before the Raiders did the Jimmy thing, which I think tells us maybe the Mac Jones wouldn't happen with the Raiders. But before that, and there was some talk that Bill Belichick liked Zappe as much as Mac Jones. It was like, well, that's a perfect fit just to go to the Raiders with Mac Jones. You cost a heck of a lot less per year than Jimmy Garoppolo, and doesn't have all the injury concerns. And, they're similar types of players. So, but still, depending on cost, I would still buy that. I would like that better than spending pick 7 on Levis.
Right. I don't really like Levis. But anyway, here's the last one, and this one's really intriguing to me. That probably won't happen because they have much money tied up there. The Broncos.
I could see Peyton and Mac Jones being
friends
together.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Run my offense. We'll scheme it up like crazy. Sorry, Russ, but I don't really care about you anymore. You're going to hang around until we can get rid of you.
You better beat him out, Russ.
Yeah, right.
You're kind of holding Russ's feet to the fire. It's like, okay, you're not rolling in with your own personal coach and your own office with office hours. There's a dude breathing down your neck, and it's not 1 and 2. It's
Stidham,
1A, 1B right now.
Right. It's a step up from Stidham. So I guess there'll be landing spots. I don't think the compensation would be great for him, though.
And it depends on the compensation. If it's got to be a 2 or a high 2, it starts to narrow, I think. But if you start talking about a 3rd-round pick, is that what it could be? Maybe a conditional pick where you wait and see, and if he doesn't turn out to be great, then you're not paying as much. And if he takes you to the playoffs, you're paying more in a future year. I think teams might get behind that kind of a deal. So interesting one with Mac Jones for sure.
Would the Ravens want him?
If there's a Lamar deal to be had, I would assume that that's the most natural part of it is he gets valued at a 2nd-round level, and you're giving up your 1st and a future 1st, and you make a deal happen for Lamar. I kind of like that for both teams.
How about I give you Mac Jones, Judon, our 1st this year and a 2nd next year for Lamar? You can inherit the Judon contract because you're getting rid of Lamar, and I need to make cap space.
I hate it from Baltimore's. I need a 1st-round pick next year. I need 2 1s.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I need 2 1s if I'm Baltimore. I like the Judon idea, though, because of cap stuff. And I would say make that 2 a 1. So 1 this year, 1 next year. Judon, Mac Jones. But that's what I'd be asking for if I'm Baltimore.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to play the Mac Jones game. You talk about restructuring your offense from what Baltimore ran to what you'd have to run with Mac.
Well, they're restructuring their offense anyway. They got a new coordinator, and currently there's no quarterback that's under contract for him
to be found. Yeah. Craziness.
Should be a lot of fun. How about the defensive tackles in this class? It's an interesting group. There's some talent. There's some high-end talent. There could be some guys that slip. And then I think some later players that you really need to maybe need to develop and change their game and could become something. But interesting class of defensive tackles. We'll get into Matt's top 5 for the draft and plus some honorable mentions next. Thanks, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check out for your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise Monday through Friday. Available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We're talking draft, salary cap management, free agency, and a lot of trade talk this week with the Draft Dudes. I've been having a lot of fun listening to them. And the newest podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, new and old. You remember the Draft Dudes, Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, the hosts of Locked On Dolphins and Locked On Bills, respectively, as well. Do great work. Find them every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, Matt, defensive tackles. I think I know who number 1 is. Is it possible that he could slide behind another tackle in this class? Talking about Georgia's Jalen Carter.
I can't see it. I really think Carter goes somewhere from 5 to 10. All those teams could use him. I'm not trying to make a splash, but just as a player, as a prospect, I think he's as good a defensive tackle as I've watched in the last 10, 15 years. There's been a lot of really good ones, but I don't know that anyone's better coming out of school than Carter.
And, because everyone, as soon as his the warrant for his arrest, that whole thing happened while he was at the combine, he immediately started dropping behind Will Anderson. If a team clears him, he still might be a better prospect on their board than Will Anderson. He might go as high as 3 overall still.
Right, right. I mean, you bring him in for a visit, you feel very comfortable with the kid. I think he's a better football player than Will Anderson, a better prospect on the field than Will Anderson.
Who is defensive tackle number 2? This is the tough decision here after Jalen Carter at number 1.
And you look at mocks, people are all over the place on Bryan Bresee from Clemson. I'm a big fan. I've really pigeoned him in the middle of the first round for the Steelers as kind of like a Cam Hayward type. He reminds me of Cam Hayward. He's a bully out there. He lines up all over the field, high character, has battled injuries and tragic story. I mean, his younger sister passed away right before the season this year. And not coincidentally, Bresee didn't have his best year. But as a freshman, true freshman, he was Clemson's best defensive player on a great team. You know, this guy's pretty good. 5-star recruit. You know, he's pretty impressive.
Taking a look at, and we got some notes on Clemson's pro day, and I'm trying to find what his notes were there. I'll find him in a second. Who is your defensive tackle 3, and how close are these guys? How close is like 2 through 5 for you?
Not real. I mean, I think Carter stands alone. Bresee to me is clearly 2, and then there's a bunch of oddballs. You know, like this position more and more. Should I list them at edge? Should I list them at interiors? Nose. And that's very true for Abaware from Northwestern too. I called him a defensive tackle. He does a lot of work on his, as a stand-up edge guy for Northwestern. He's just a disruptive defensive lineman, great tester, still a work in progress a little bit with his technique and whatnot. But I think there's a lot to work with there. By
the way, Bresee's official results from his pro day at Clemson: 28 bench press reps. He was 4.45 in the 20-yard shuttle, not the 40-yard dash. 7.41 in the 3-cone, all pretty good at 6'5", 302 pounds. So solid athletic testing numbers, not mind-blowing there for a 6'5", 300-pound defensive interior pass rusher.
And his combine was even better, to be honest with you. He ran really well, and 10-yard split was really good. So,
and Thursday when we get into the edge prospects in this class, his teammate Myles Murphy put together a pretty impressive testing day at Clemson's pro day. We'll talk about that then. Abaware here, your defensive tackle 3 in this class. It's tough because the question will be with him, and absolute freak, and some arm length too, which you really like. 34-inch arms at only 6'2", 282 pounds. So he's built weird. Is he a tweener, or can he play both? And we've seen this multiple times. And I have sort of PTSD from the 49ers drafting, a really nice prospect out of Stanford in 2017 in Solomon Thomas, who was very similar to this, 6'2", 208 pounds. He was really explosive upfield, but he was a tweener. He wasn't really an edge, and he wasn't really an interior guy on run downs. And so what he ended up being was someone who bounced through and was none. And so that's what I'd worry about with Abaware. You better have a plan. Is he a tweener where he's not kind of doesn't fit either? Or it's like, oh, he actually can do both at a very high level, because we've seen those in the NFL as well. And man, explosive ability, production, it's all there for Abaware out of Northwestern.
I've mocked him to the Saints at the end of the first round, just as kind of a Cam Jordan type, big end that bounces inside. Some teams will be really high on him, some won't. And I think that's true for this next guy too, Kalijah Kancey from my Pitt Panthers.
It's a wild DT class, because the only guy I would guarantee just based on his grade is Jalen Carter being a no doubt first round pick. And who knows, maybe teams deem him, and maybe 0 defensive tackles go in the first round of the NFL draft. And I can't remember that ever happening, but you could make the argument that 5 or 6 of them will go in the first round.
Yeah, it really is interesting. Like Kancey, to me, he's very small, and he has short arms compared to Abaware as well. Super quick, well coached, leverage guy, but he definitely is not for everybody.
He owes half of his signing bonus to Aaron Donald coming out of it and being that small, undersized defensive tackle and playing so well, because otherwise I think teams would have a harder time believing in Kancey at his size.
Yes, but that's obviously the biggest shoes you could ever fill in the world. The poor guy's never going to fill them. But even
totally unfair to him.
But even when AD was coming out of Pitt, he was much stouter, stronger than this guy. He's a thicker build, lower power dude. Kancey's all quickness and explosion,
Who's your number 5 tackle in this class?
I was torn between Mazi Smith, which is who I went with, the big nose from Michigan that is an extreme athlete, And Gervin Dexter from Florida, who's the total opposite. He's super long. He's 6'6", 310, kind of has that Chris Jones body type, and he's just kind of growing into his paws right now. I think he'll be a better NFL player than college player. But I went with Mazi Smith, and I was a little reluctant because he's played a lot of football for Michigan, and he has half a sack for his career. But boy, is he stout and I mean, he's the leader of the Feldman freak list. I mean, so I'm sure defensive line coaches are like, just get my hands on him and I'll turn him into a guy. And if it wasn't for Rashawn Gary, who was kind of the same way at Michigan, who just didn't do anything until he got to the pros, I'd be even a little more hesitant.
And it took Gary a little bit. It does take interior defensive linemen some time. And it just because of, how they're pigeonholed as young players, developing that technique. But when you watch Mazi Smith just jump out of his stance at 6'3", 323 pounds, that's like, wow. And I know defensive line coaches are going to look at him and say, just give me that, because not only can he play nose and two gap for you, especially this day and age with his size and his power, his explosiveness. I think Javon Hargrave's the perfect example, because Hargrave's more pure like nose coming out. And then the more he got used by different teams in other roles, you realize what else he could do. Mazi Smith probably has defensive line coaches licking their chops saying, I think he could be that, or he's a 3-down player. And there's a lot more pass rush to come in the NFL. And
if Mazi Smith played at South Carolina State, he probably would have had a couple more sacks.
I think I would imagine him.
Probably do okay.
Anybody later that you looked at that you really like from this class?
I think we have to mention Ika from Baylor, just because he's rare. I mean, when we were kids, or even 15 years ago, he's a first-round pick all day, and I don't think he's Vita Vea in terms of freakiness, and I think he's still a 2-down player, throwback nose, even though he doesn't look like Will Fork or Hampton. He's not a round guy. I mean, he's still a longer build, but he just doesn't bring enough as a pass rusher. So I think he's probably middle of day 2. And Keanu Benton, I think, is another day 2 pick from Wisconsin. He's a bully with, heavy hands. I think his game will translate well to the league.
I'm waiting for the Bowling Green Pro Day. I don't know if that's come out yet, but Carl Brooks to me was a combine snub. And if you miss out on Adebawore, who's 6'2", 282, there's another converted defensive end that they could play tackle. It's actually bigger. And Carl Brooks was really good at the Senior Bowl. I think he's that perfect 3 technique. He could play some early down on end. He was 300 pounds, but he was super productive at Bowling Green. And I want to see his athletic testing numbers, because I think he's a day 2 guy. And I think it might be the highest player drafted that wasn't invited to the combine.
That makes perfect sense. I don't understand why he wasn't. He's a very good prospect. That's a great call, though.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen. If you don't like Matt's rankings of defensive tackles, or want to let us know about maybe the guy that you like, hit us up. We've got a mailbag coming tomorrow at BD Peacock on Twitter, at Williamson NFL. Make sure you're subscribed up to the new Peacock and Williamson YouTube channel as well. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.